Hey everyone, it's Estriola Man, and welcome back to another video game review. This time I'm going to be reviewing the online first-person shooter from Bungie and Activision, Destiny 2. So, the story of Destiny 2 is a major improvement over the first Destiny, and the fact that there's actually a story and there's actual characters that you can interact with. And that's helped along with some pretty good voice acting, and there's also a pretty good villain in Gull, and they set up right away that he's a bad dude and that he will take everything from you, your light, your gear, everything, and the whole story is basically you just building yourself back up to go and take back what's yours. And I really enjoyed that story thread. It's helped along by the fact that there's excellent cutscenes and the music is so good. It caught me off guard just how good the music in Destiny 2 is. Sorry. I will say that the ending mission had some pretty awesome set pieces, but the final fight itself was a little lackluster, but that didn't affect my overall enjoyment of the story. I will say that Destiny still has some of the best aesthetic design and world design in terms of just the way it looks, and there's just a lot of small details they put into it. So there's still the same enemies. You got the Fallen, the Hive, the Vex, the Cabal, and the Taken, but they've all been giving a like I said, small details, like the way the shields pop when you take off their shields, and like the headshots and the death animations. That's all pretty neat, and it just gives new life to the enemies. They've also changed it up a little bit by adding some new enemy classes that throw you off a bit. Now, they could be the same ones, and I just stopped playing Destiny 1 after Oryx Year 2, if I remember right. So they could just be the same, and I just haven't played in a while. But nevertheless, I enjoyed it. There's a good amount of content in Destiny 2, and that's a really, really good thing. I enjoyed that. The main campaign is about 12 hours, somewhere around 12 hours, and the adventures, or basically your side quests, I really enjoyed them. They're pretty long, and they actually are relevant to the story, and I just really enjoyed doing the adventures. And if you do your adventures with your main quests, along with some other things that pop up, I think. I vaguely remember. But anyway, total, it's about 20 to 25 hours. So, like I said, pretty good amount of content. It's all pretty solid. And the maps themselves are better designed, and that's so great. They're all very different. All the worlds feel different, and there's just a lot of stuff to explore, and you get rewarded for exploring. And yeah, there's just a lot of stuff to discover in the new worlds. And my personal favorite is probably the EDZ or the European Dead Zone, but all of them are pretty solid. I will also say that public events have returned, and this is kind of what I'm talking about with just improvements overall. I actually want to do public events this time around. They're more rewarding. Everything you do is rewarding and just helps you get make your character better, and everything just feels rewarding. And I also like how you can make standard public events into heroic public events to get better loot, and it's just a lot of small touches like that that just really improve the game for me. I will say that Postgame is a little lacking, but it's still fun. Strikes are a fun little diversion, It sucks that you can't choose the strike that you want, but it's fine. And yeah, it's just a fun little thing that you can do with your friends, and you do occasionally get some good rewards out of it, so they are worth doing if the milestone pops up. The Nightfall has been made more challenging. Each week there's going to be a rotation of different modifiers to it, and you have a time limit now, and I don't know, it's way more challenging, but it's very rewarding, and I actually enjoy the Nightfall a lot. The treasure maps are a cool idea. You get them from Cade, and they'll pop up on one of the the planets. Sorry, and you just go around and you find his stashes that he left behind, and you can actually get some pretty good rewards out of it. So the treasure maps are definitely worth doing. Flashpoints are alright. Once again, you get them from Cade. You just go to a planet and you just do a bunch of public events. Once again, you do get good rewards out of it, so it's worth doing, but it's okay. The premier single player event is still the raid. The actual size of the raid is impressive. The Leviathan just looks awesome, and I enjoy that you can go into the underbelly and just explore the Leviathan and see a bunch of different places and just get treasure chests and stuff. This time around, teamwork is an absolute must. You have to be on top of your game, and yeah, it's just very, very teamwork heavy this time around, and it is a good thing because you don't get very many experiences, especially in a first-person shooter like this, where there's just a bunch of puzzles. And I will say that the puzzle elements of this raid are bumped up a bit. I think that's the word I was looking for. But it also hurts because that means that if you have new players to the raid, or if you have somebody that's not that very, that's like not a good skill level, it can bring down the entire team, and that just, it kind of sucks. It really does, because I'll just keep it there. But I think you might understand what I'm trying to say. And I will say that this raid can be frustrating, very, very frustrating, especially the gardens. And my favorite raid is still the Vault of Glass. I thought that was a good mix of puzzles and just shooting elements. And you could still be not very skilled as a player, but still get enjoyment out of it. This one, not so much, but I still enjoy this raid, and I do think it's worth doing. I mean, it's definitely worth doing, but yeah, like I said, this one is still very fun. Even though it's frustrating and filled with many, many bugs. The whole game is really propped up, though, by the fact that the gameplay is still really fun. It has solid shooting mechanics for a first-person shooter, and everything in the game feels responsive, and everything is fun to use. The weapons themselves are somewhat varied, and each one feels different. And then, of course, it just comes down to player choice of what category of weapons you like to use. Me personally, I'm a scout rifle guy, and my secondary is probably, let me think about it, probably auto rifles or submachine guns, actually. So scout rifles, submachine guns are my two favorite. My least favorite is pulse rifles, and I think that's pretty much everyone's least favorite is the pulse rifles. Where was I? Sorry, I lost myself in the notes. There we go. Changes to the loadouts are a little weird. So how it works in this game is that your main weapon is going to be just a weapon without a burn, so just kinetic, and then your secondary is going to have a burn to it. So you can have two scout rifles in your loadouts, and one will just be kinetic and one will have a burn to it. So it's a little weird. And then, of course, you got your power weapons. And it takes a little bit getting used to at first, but it's fine. You get used to it. It's not that bad. I am a little salty still about shotguns being considered power weapons, but I got over it. Not really, but you have to get over it. Anyway, um, the classes this time around do feel very unique, especially compared to the last game. Because in the last game there was some differences, mainly with your subclasses, but they're all basically the same except for the jumps. This time around they added some new stuff, and there's actual gameplay differences between the Titan, Warlock, and Hunter. So that is something to think about, and I actually enjoy that quite a bit. And I will say that at times you can feel the 30 frames per second. It's not that big a deal, and I understand why they went with 30 frames per second, and I think it was the right call on console. But yeah, like I said, even though you can feel it at times, the game is still pretty fluid and fun. The main hook for the game is the loot grind. You're constantly just getting new gear and just shedding the old gear, and that feels fun and rewarding. Like I said, you're just constantly getting rewarded, especially with exotics this time around. They just drop all the time, which I mean is fine, but yeah, I really enjoy the loot grind, and I will say that bright engrams are total BS. If you're not caught up to speed with the whole situation, shaders are now consumables, and it's all BS. And the whole bright engrams thing and the microtransactions, it's all BS. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. So the last thing I want to talk about is the Crucible, and I am not a fan of the Crucible. I'm generally not a fan of PvP anyway, but I'm really not a fan of what they did with the Crucible this time around. They changed it to 4v4, and I don't like that change, mainly because in Destiny 1 with the 6v6, you could have one or two players that aren't really good at PvP, and it still wouldn't hurt your team overall, especially if somebody ended up leaving. But this time around, once again, it just comes down to everybody has to perform, and if you have two people leave your party, then you just can't win, and it sucks. And I hope they do something about it. The standard modes are there, so it's basically everything that you could think of for PvP shooters. So capture, team deathmatch, kill confirmed. I think there's a couple others. I haven't really played them though. But yeah, it's very basic modes. And I actually don't think the map design for the PvP is that strong. None of the actual maps really stand out. My favorite is probably the one on Mars where you're on the Cabal warship and like you can see the other Cabal ships on the ground or whatever. That's probably my favorite just because of the way it looks and where you are. But yeah, overall, the maps aren't that great in my opinion. And yeah, I will say that the Crucible was more fun in the first game because that one was at least tolerable. And the Trials of the Nine are there if you're interested in that. And oh yeah, forgot to mention, clans in this game are awesome. You can get some very, very good gear by doing clans. And I haven't done the guided stuff yet, but I hear you can get some really good stuff from that too. And I'm very glad that Bungie is doing a thing where you can help other players and you can actually basically matchmake. So it's cool, and I really applaud Bungie for doing that. So with all of that out of the way, I'll get on to my final thoughts. Destiny 2 is a great game. It makes a lot of small changes to the formula that really improve it, especially over the first game. The story is really great with awesome characters, a pretty good villain, and great world and level design. And there's just a bunch of stuff to do, and the game is fun and playable by yourself, but way more fun with friends. The raid and a bunch of other stuff is a bit buggy and can be frustrating, but that doesn't hurt my overall experience with the game. And also there's Crucible if that's what you want to do. So, I would highly recommend playing this game if you really want to, and get some friends and go out and just have yourself a great old time. So, that's it for this review. If you liked what you've seen, you can go ahead and like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more game reviews, streams, and all the good gaming stuff. And also remember to come find me on Twitter. I don't post a lot, but I do post enough to where you might be able to be kept up with what I'm doing. That was just thrown at the last minute. Sorry about that. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.